You can be seated. On this Shabbat before Purim, I'd like to draw from the teachings of Rabbi Nachman of Bratslav, an 18th century Hasidic master whose followers today are best known for their joy and their laughter and their dancing, which are all expressions of their faith and expressions of their religious outlook on life, which is that it is all good because it is all God. Rabbi Nachman was a great-grandson of the Baal Shem Tov. He attracted thousands of followers in his own lifetime. His religious philosophy revolved around closeness to God and speaking to God in normal conversation, as one might with a best friend or confidant. This practice is called hitbodedut, private, intimate, spontaneous, heartfelt prayer and meditation, without a script, without a prayer book, just by finding a quiet corner in one's home, or better yet, someplace in the woods, as Nachman was known to do, you can commune with God. Just open your mouth, articulate your deepest desires, and God will draw near to you. Perhaps this is what is meant by the famous words of our Parsha, which we just heard, V'asuli mikdash v'shachanti betocham. Make for me a sanctuary, and I will dwell there among them. Make me a sanctuary anytime, anywhere, and I will be there with you, God says. I will meet you. Just tell me where to go. Just tell me when you're ready, and I will be there with you. What else do we know about Rabbi Nachman? He traveled a lot. He visited Israel during Napoleon's war. Nachman touched the stones of the Kotel and returned to his home in the Ukraine. We know that he also battled depression. Some specialists now retroactively diagnose him as being a manic depressive with ecstatic highs infused with religious fervor, followed by dangerously low lows when he would take refuge in God's embrace. The Rebbe died young at the age of 38, but his influence is still felt today. Jews of all stripes feel close to him, so much so that he is often referred to simply as Nachman. His great appeal, even among secular Jews today in Israel and throughout the diaspora, is that he was able to articulate both faith and doubt, both what it feels like to strive for God's nearness and to arrive in God's embrace, despite the struggles. Nachman meditates on experiences of earthly suffering, on real fears, and yet he is able to walk through the world somehow with religious confidence, with spiritual courage, knowing that this broken world was created by none other than God's brilliant and loving design. 4 years before he died, Nachman told a series of stories. He taught some stories are for, some folks say that storytelling is for putting people to sleep. But I say they are mistaken, for I believe that stories are to awaken us. So I'd like to thank Dr. B.T. Roe of the Hartman Institute for calling these stories to my attention recently. I'll share just two. The first one is called The Chandelier Maker. Once there was a young man who, like Nachman himself, traveled far distances, and perhaps this is a bit of an autobiography. He traveled a long time and a long way, and when he returned to his home, he boasted to his parents that he had learned a great craft while he was away. He learned how to make a chandelier, how to fashion an luminous, glowing piece of art from glass and metal. And so the son asked his parents to assemble all the craftsmen in the region of their home so that he could share with them the wisdom, this newfound wisdom of his craft. And so they did. And craftsmen and women came from near and far. And then he revealed for them what he had created based on the wisdom he had acquired through his travels. He unveiled an enormous chandelier, very intricate in its work. And it was the ugliest chandelier they had ever seen. And the parents asked the craftsmen and women privately, please tell us the truth. What do you see? And they said, that is the ugliest chandelier we have ever seen. And so the parents broke the news to Nachman and they said, it seems that in everyone's eyes, your creation is ugly. And then the son said, well, then I have succeeded. It is true that you can look upon the chandelier and see only what is lacking. But I am here to tell you today, what I have learned is that what one person sees as a flaw, another person might see as a thing of beauty. And what one person sees as a thing of beauty, the other might see as an ugly flaw. I have made this chandelier only out of lackings, only out of flawed materials, to show you that no one of us has completeness and nothing in this world is complete. We all lack something. And what is beautiful in one person's eyes is ugly in another and vice versa. But in truth, I can make a perfect chandelier because I have taught you now this perfect lesson. If people would only know all the lackings that hinder a thing, they would know the essence of the thing, even if they had never seen it with their own eyes. So it is with God's world, with every human being who is flawed, with every leaf of every tree that is somehow fractured, with every snowflake that is somehow imperfect. This is the nature of God's world. This is the beauty of God's world, because it teaches us to see the lackings and to receive the lackings as gifts. The mission of any work of art, the mission of a religious life, is to deal with the chesronot, with the lackings of this world, and to give them meaning or even beauty. Without the lacking, there would be no prayer. Without a defect, there would be no striving. Without obstacles, there would be no hope. Without ugliness, there would be no creativity. And without flaws, there would be no dignity of work. Rabbi Nachman says to us, do not deny the lackings of your life. Don't be frustrated by the chesronot of this world. See them, acknowledge them, study them, know them, embrace them. And they will become a great source of light and illumination for you, just as that chandelier. He says, like every rabbi might say, my mission is to bring the people of Israel closer to God, but I can only do that when they come forward with their lackings. Our parsha says the same. Each one was instructed to bring a gift of the heart. Each one, I imagine, looked at that little object in their calloused hands, maybe a bit of gold, maybe even a precious stone like lapis lazuli, maybe just a piece of fabric of fine linen or some woolen yarns, or maybe the colored dyes to make those yarns and those linens more beautiful, a bit of royal blue or crimson or purple. Some might have brought a beam of acacia wood, and some did not bring material goods, but they brought their skills, their imperfect skills. Weavers and architects, holy schleppers and metal workers. These too were gifts of the heart. These also were lacking. Whoever's heart so moves them. whoever's heart feels it is lacking. By bringing forward the lacking from the wilderness, they were more ready to embrace their opportunities for generosity and fulfillment. I think that is the best opposite of the word lacking, fulfillment. The opposite of lacking is not having. The opposite of lacking does not bring the satisfaction of being full or satiated, but rather the kind of satisfaction that comes from fulfillment, for having brought that gift of the heart, that flawed gift of the flawed heart. This is the joy our ancestors knew when they built the Mishkan out of a little bit of this and a little bit of that, until, lo and behold, they constructed a dwelling place for none other than God Most High. This is the kind of spiritual fulfillment that Nachman of Bratslav and his followers would seek in their life's wildernesses amid crushing poverty and plague and threats of violence and hatred. This is the kind of spiritual confidence that we seek on this Shabbat Zachor. A full year into pandemic, God help us. A time of real doubt and real anxiety. A time of real loss and real suffering. This is exactly the time when we should meditate on our lackings and to push through the seeking until we discover there an opportunity for fulfillment and purpose. The next story I'd like to tell is a shorter one and a funnier one, which is good because Purim is on its way. The name of this story is A Garment for the Moon. Reb Nachman tells that the moon complained to the sun because the sun served primarily in the daytime when it was warm and in the summer when the days were long. Meanwhile, the moon had to serve in the winter, which was cold and dark, and the nights were long. The sun appeased the moon and said, "Okay, moon, we shall make for you a garment to keep you warm." And so the sun invited the great tailors to make a garment of warmth for the moon. The minor tailors trailed behind. They wanted to be a part of it too. Even though we weren't invited, we will go. And so that first set of tailors, the first class tailors, they tried and tried, and then they threw up their hands and they said to the sun, "There can be no garment for the moon, because it is sometimes large and sometimes small, and it is constantly changing on us, and therefore we could not possibly determine the proper measurements for this garment." And that could be where the story ends. But instead, the minor tailors step forward, those second-class tailors with their flawed skills and their flawed hearts. And they say that they will be determined to measure that garment. And the sun asks, "But if the great tailors were not able to do so, how could you possibly do so?" And that is where the story ends. Now, I imagine when Reb Nachman would tell this story to his disciples, they would be rolling in the aisles. Maybe he even told it on Shabbat Zachor before Purim to get them in the mood. Tailoring is a Jewish profession, after all. But this story reads like a joke, an impossible assignment to make a fine, warm garment for the moon, for a customer who gains 30 pounds and loses 30 pounds between each and every fitting. This is a story, this is a lesson in how to laugh in the face of frustration. And God knows we need to learn that kind of laughter today. The first-class tailors make perfect stitches that are strong and unforgiving. Highly tailored and highly fitted garments might work well for the steady sun, but not for the moon, which waxes and wanes each and every day of the year. Meanwhile, the stitches of the second-class tailors are imperfect. The garments they create are loose, made of billowing fabric, like the fabrics designed for that portable and flexible Mishkan, the tabernacle of the wilderness, of lacking. Life in lockdown requires flexible and loose-fitting clothing. What are you wearing in your home right now? The Namer family, they look their best, wearing their Shabbos best in fine-fitting clothes with fine stitches. But what about you? I don't think so. Life in lockdown requires flexible plans and modest expectations. And this is hard for us. Let's admit it. We are used to feeling like first-class tailors. We are smart and hardworking and ambitious in all areas of life. And we know how to get results in ordinary days. But these are not ordinary days. And so we spin in frustration and lacking. We are used to succeeding in our works of creation by fine design and skilled labors, but not now. Not in lockdown. And so it is a humbling and difficult lesson to know that we are today, all of us, lesser tailors. Nachman's story comes to celebrate those lesser tailors. Our Torah portion also celebrates the second-class workers who are the real heroes when life itself has become a wilderness. Parashat Truma teaches us that sometimes the lack is a gift in and of itself. Rabbi Nachman of Bratslav urges us to embrace this gift of lacking, to receive it as an end in and of itself, not only as a trigger for planning careful next steps to find our way out of this state of lacking, but rather as a gift in and of itself, a reason for us to pause and reflect, to count our blessings, to see the fractures and the fears and the fissures and the flaws, and thereby to know God's nearness. So good people, consider today, what are your chesronot? What are your lackings today? Do you lack patience? Do you lack focus? Do you lack energy? Do you lack companionship? Do you lack intellectual stimulation or spiritual uplift? Let us bring these and more, all of those chesronot, all of those lackings, like the ugliness of the chandelier, let them become a source of light and illumination for us all. And like those lesser tailors, let us without hesitation show up every day, get out of bed even when it's hard, to rise without hesitation to the challenge of these days. Let the garments we create for an ever-changing world be like the garment for the moon, not perfect, but flexible, comfortable, and comforting. Let us bring together all these chesronot, all of these lacks, and like the second-rate ingredients of the Mishkan in the wilderness, let them come together to be something of beauty, a billowing sanctuary, blowing in the wind, an imperfect and sacred dwelling place where the human and the divine can meet one another and embrace.